Hello, everybody, and welcome, one and all, to the Jerick Show. Whether it's the good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, wherever you are, if you're watching this live, that is. So the show that we bring you every week is actually a one-off, because this week we're doing it, and then next week I'm traveling, and my colleague is traveling as well. So this is just like one of those one-off special episodes. So you know how someone once actually messaged me saying like the intro that I do right now, this part, it's always really quick and right, you know, whatever. So that's why I'm taking my time today, because clearly this is the part that you love the most, the part where I'm just monologuing, speaking, opening my heart out to you, lovely listeners.
Welcome to the Jerick Show, featuring your hosts Javvad Malik and Eric Krohn. Timely topics, poorly presented.
On the flip side, somebody did say to me recently that I'm quite insufferable to be around. Speaking of insufferable things, Eric, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I do have a question for you, though. In the beginning there, you started off with the good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are, if you're watching live. Why don't you care about the people that actually watch us recorded? Do you not wish them a good morning, evening, afternoon, or whatever if they're watching the recording of this? Why did you have to be specific for the if you're watching us live?
So what I meant was if you're watching it live, but if you're dead, then you're not going to be watching us. That's what.
Well done, my friend. Well done.
The opposite of live is dead, is not recorded. I mean,
indeed. So yeah, you mentioned we're going to be like traveling next week, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, what could I do to add value to the show? And I thought about it. I think I want to try to recreate one of the most famous scenes from our show.
Having a good time. Life is tough. Life is tough. What can I say? Life is tough.
Wow, I forgot
that was
you
a good
even
time,
had
right?
That was good times. That was good times. Speaking of, honestly, this is just ridiculous. But that was only in response to.
Yeah. And I kind of still feel the same.
Yeah. And you know what? No one really cares about you. So let's move on to the story. Okay. Maybe your kids care about you.
Maybe they have daddy issues. Wow. Gosh. Therapy now.
Speaking of daddy issues, Daddy has issues because they have been accused of serious security failings by the FTC. So they were major security failures, were the cause of multiple customer data breaches of web hosting giant GoDaddy. As a proposed settlement, they will implement a robust information security program to overall unreasonable security practices. How do companies get so big without even having a robust security program in place? And what does that even mean? But
yeah. I mean, that's such an open-ended robust compared to what? Like what? Now you have people on call 24/7. That's very robust, right? You have more than an AI and some sim that's flooding alerts, 30 per second, scrolling by the one poor guy that you've hired part-time to try to look at. I mean, it really, but it is sad. It does get real old.
It does. And if you're following it, they had breaches between 2019 and 22, and they compromised over 28,000 SSH credentials, 199 employee SSH credentials, none of which had multi-factor authentication. So they captured.
I mean, in all fairness, way back in 2019, did anyone know about MFA? Come on.
Yeah,
it's been around forever.
It has. So it's good that they've been slapped across the wrist. Whether this is really a strong message and whether this will change anything is yet to be seen.
Yep. Yep. You know what? Speaking of MFA, I do have a sad thing to report. And that
Go on.
is after about 10 years, my old trusty very first YubiKey has finally died.
Oh,
I plug it in now and it's like I got no idea what the hell that is. I know.
I was looking for some sadder music, but this is the best I could do.
So I kind of say that because of the point that people are like, oh, it's expensive. This is like a $10 or $12 YubiKey that's lasted me over a decade. Please. I mean, and it's been through hell. It's been washed. It's been drugged through everything. Like, come on, man. And it finally died. There is no excuse not to implement things like this, especially if you're dealing with sensitive stuff. Go with the physical key, please, for the love of all that's good. Anyway,
Yeah.
my little side rant.
Well, I think it's also easier when you kind of like, if you're working from a few locations, like predominantly like as a home office or work office. I think when you're traveling a bit or you have lots of devices, then it can get a bit tricky. But I think everyone give it a go. If it's not for you, disable it, but I think you'll be happy with it. Anyway, do you have an iPhone or Android? It doesn't matter. NSA warns both to disable location tracking. What's this all about, Eric?
Yeah, so one of those lovely marketing companies we've talked about before that does those great things like track your every move and breath had some breach stuff going on and very sensitive location information and all that kind of stuff. Gravy Analytics. Who came up with that name, right? Gravy Analytics.
They're not even trying to hide what they do.
No. And if you read some of this stuff here, like their mission statement sort of stuff, it's basically comes across as we will spy on you and sell your information to anyone that'll give us $1 or $2 for it. Now there is like this analytics stuff. It's involved in all kinds of stuff. We've had issues with location tracking, and something we got to think about with these is they're constantly tracking us. All of our apps are tracking us. I mean, there was a list of apps in there of different things that this information goes out on. And what kills me is, we get people, they download this stuff like the calculator that needs your exact or precise location and access to all your contacts in case you want to share a calculation with them or something. Like, nobody ever looks at that stuff and they just go, oh, okay. And that gets pretty ugly. It's still okayed by the stores, whether it be the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, the App Store, because technically they've told you what they're doing. Yeah. But God, it's shady practices in some of this stuff, especially a lot of the stuff that was called out in there had to do with some of the games. Like
I saw that.
And
Temple Run and everything. Yeah.
The Subway one, all that kind of stuff was specifically called out in this. Yeah, there you go, in the list of apps here, right?
Yeah, Tinder, Grinder, and then Candy Crush, Temple Run, Subway Surfers, Harry Potter, Puzzles and Spells. Can't they do
period tracking app?
Notus or whatever, and
right, dude, a period tracking app. Why does a period tracking app need to know your precise location and things like that?
Well, this is, I think, why when the whole US abortion ban was going on, some privacy advocates were telling people to uninstall the period apps because they track locations and they didn't want them to figure out when people might be going for abortions and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, Flight Radar, religious focus apps such as Muslim prayer and Christian Bible apps, pregnancy trackers, VPN. This is just basically everything. Your deepest, darkest, personal stuff. Everything is being tracked. It's just horrendous, isn't it?
I'm of the opinion, much like the smartphones, which we've talked about before, it comes down to the money is not being made on the app or whatever.
Yeah.
But instead it's being made on the information they're stealing and selling.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's nothing more to say to that. So Office of Public Affairs. U.S. government disrupts botnet in People's Republic of China used to conceal hacking of critical infrastructure. That's a bit of a mouthful. Let's zoom in a bit. Zoom, enhance. Okay, court authorized operation remove malware.
enhance.
Yeah.
Enhance. Yeah. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
There was some malware that was on, I think it was Exchange servers. And the feds went in and actually patched those Exchange servers. Do you remember that one?
Yes, they did. Yeah. That was like there. They went in and they patched the vulnerability. Yeah,
exactly.
Have they done the same over here?
That's happened again.
Oh,
yeah.
And
again,
they
got a court order.
As well, we were like, there's this thin line here that you're crossing, that you're going into people's privately owned devices, and while the intent is good, there's no consent for it. So
what if I want to host a botnet on my router?
I mean, what if there's some legacy systems they're running that only work with this version or whatever it might be? It's this is the thing. It's like, what's the difference between a pen test and a hack? And consent is really what it is, isn't it? You have permission to do the pen test. Consent
scope. And this kind of does go back to a couple of weeks ago. We talked about, and actually just wrote an article about it, about like the outdated routers and outdated equipment that we have floating around out there, the stuff that's unpatchable, but still working great, still working fine. And the challenges that we have of convincing people to replace something that's still working just fine. And it's unfortunate, but we see all this stuff like, all these end-of-life devices. But for a lot of organizations, why would you want to replace something that's not inexpensive? Some of these devices are pretty big, like some of these edge routers. It's not inexpensive. It does perfectly fine, but we want you to replace it because we've decided, we've got to come up with a better way to do this.
Yeah.
And it's not having the feds go in and patch stuff.
No. And it's a really tough one. And I know, like, some people, some organizations, they open source their product, and then it's like you can community do it and patch it, but then that opens up a whole nother can of worms in its own right. There's some like self-modding forums that crop up, like, this is how you can jailbreak it and then patch it yourself, but it's just, this is so far beyond the scope of what most people want. It's I don't know what the answer to this is. Eric, you're bringing up all the stories I don't know is my default.
I know. Well, yeah, you remember for a couple of years, I went to CES, the Consumer Electronics Show here in Vegas, where they like launch all of the newest, latest, greatest stuff, right? From IoT to EVs to everything in between. And I went around and I specifically asked vendors, how long are you committing to providing patches and security updates to this product? And I can tell you, it didn't matter from the smallest IoT, like door sensor, up to full-on EV cars and trucks. Everybody had the same answer. We don't know. We won't commit to anything. And I'm like, so if I buy this EV for $110,000 or whatever, in 5 years, you could go, yeah, we're not going to support that when we got a new one over here anymore. And what if a vulnerability comes up, especially having things connected and having radios in them these days? What if something comes up that could, accelerate for me, steer for me? Everything's drive-by-wire these days anyways. And so at what point do you get to where like the car is a disposable thing? That this is supposed to be a durable goods. You don't expect your TV to last longer than your car, right?
No, exactly. It should be like, I don't know. It's trying to not get on a soapbox here, but it's like if you buy a bicycle, that's going to last you forever, pretty much. If the chain needs replacing, the sprockets needs replacing, whatever, you can. Everything is replaceable and everything is doable, and that's how cars used to be, but they're not anymore. And the worst thing is you feel like you're being held to ransom because you're paying such an extortionate fee for the car. And then if it was like some social media apps where the the car is given to you for free, but then they control everything else. That might be a trade-off that some people are happy to make. But I think when it's like this, where, like you say, you're paying a lot of money for it. The infrastructure for EVs isn't great as it is today anyway. So you're taking a big hit on a lot of things. I get charge anxiety on my phone when I'm traveling and it hits below 50%. I'm like, oh my God, let me stop using my apps because I don't want the phone to die on me.
You're like, low power mode.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the stress of the car would just like, whatever few black hairs I have in my beard remaining, they would turn gray instantly.
Yeah, and I don't mean to, well, hell, what the hell? I'll throw it out there. Let's be a little controversial here. It's almost could come down to being a class thing. And follow me here. If you can't afford to buy a new car every 4 or 5 years, you're going to be stuck with the vulnerable piece that's on the road where somebody could kill you at any time. So the poors get the leftovers that are vulnerable, right? And the rich drive these things that aren't going to careen into a guardrail or something. I know that's a stretch, but you kind of get the idea where if we can't keep going down this unsustainable route like that.
Well, I think what probably the alternative that they want to push is like, why buy a car when you can lease it from us for 5 years? And for 5 years, it will be covered, it will be everything. And then you just give it back and then you take the latest model out again. So it's kind of like moving to a more subscription model of vehicle ownership than actual outright ownership.
See, so I don't know about you over there, but here, we do the recycling thing and all that. But one of the big things that's an issue, like with our area here, is e-waste. Okay, so I can't just throw a TV in the trash. I have to pay them like $10 or something to be able to dispose of the TV. So is that what you're going to have to do with your car? Right? It's like when you buy tires over here, you pay a fee for the tire disposal up front, and then you pay a fee for tire disposal later. It seems like every time you turn around, they're hitting you for right. And then what do you do with all that? It's back to being e-waste. And the reason they say they charge us for things like TVs is it needs special handling to dispose of, or they're just storing it until we figure out what to do. We can't do that with these EVs. We can't do that with, again, I'm not anti-EV either, but I think for me, at least, the idea of having a hybrid over an EV and at least having the gas engine to get me around if I need to makes me feel much, much better. So,
yeah. But also, come on, nothing gets the testosterone pumping like a 6-liter turbocharged Hellcat or whatever.
I don't know, man. They got those. The new Dodge Charger is an EV. It's an electric car, and it's super fast and all this, and it has an electronic engine sound. It's a vroom vroom. It's got speakers and stuff that go vroom vroom, and. I know. I saw that one at CES too, and I was like, "Oh man, come on! Are you serious?"
It's just wrong, isn't it? It's like I'm trying to think of something that's appropriate to say right now, and I can't. So I'm going to just move on. Okay. So,
yep.
A Nigerian national pleads guilty to a scheme that defrauded more than 400 U.S. victims. Yeah. So the Nigerian prince scam is real. We're not being outdated when we say this still happens even today.
That's actually why I chose this story, because I was looking at it and I'm like, man, this is like the stuff we all joke about, but it's still going on. This is an inheritance scam. Yeah. And it's still been going on. It's still been getting victims. Look at this. He made over $6 million from 400 victims. Holy crap. I didn't do math on this, but he was pretty successful for 400 victims to get $6 million out of them.
So he sent personalized letters to elderly victims in the US over the course of several years. And then the scam kicked in. And then the inheritance, and they need said money for delivery fees, taxes, and others. And then they collected, and he defrauded over 6 million from many of whom were elderly or otherwise vulnerable. It's so disgusting. these are the bottom feeders of society, isn't it? They're like
It is.
so.
Well, the thing is, we can't forget about these simple ones. Like, how often are we all concentrated on these super, like, crazy technical, like, super smart people that are doing all this crazy stuff, right? When the simplicity of something like this going, you want some money, send me money for the taxes, freaking nets a guy $6 million.
They talk about the U.S. Postal Inspection Service here.
Yeah, the post office.
It reminds me. There's a movie. There's a movie called Queen Pins. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
It's on Netflix over here. It's about these. It's based on a true story about two women who basically defraud, make fake vouchers, coupons, and they build a whole empire out of coupons, basically. But there's one of the store sort of workers, and he's like a typical nerd sort of thing, and he's trying to get the FBI involved, and no one's paying attention. And then an inspector from the U.S. Postal Service comes down, and he takes it really seriously. And then that's it's a good movie. If you see it on Netflix, Queen Pins, it's worth a watch.
Have you seen the show Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Oh yes.
Yeah, okay. So there's a Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode or two where they end up working with the postal cops. And
yes,
I believe it's what is it? Andy Bernard from The Office. The guy that plays Andy Bernard is the postal cop. And that's it. Those are some fun episodes. Anyway, moving on to some better news. 105 suspected internet fraudsters. Yeah.
In where? Abuja? Where is that?
Abuja. I have no idea. I thought maybe you would know. Yeah. So it's always good news when we hear that people get busted like this. But this is 4 Chinese and 101 Nigerians. So it really is a Nigerian prince scam.
It's the capital of Nigeria, Abuja.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Having never been there, I apologize, but yeah, this kind of stuff is again still going on at scale. And I think what's interesting about this sometimes is we see these things where there's actually these call centers that these people come to work for. And in some cases, as we may see here in a moment, some of this stuff though is human trafficking.
It is. We've spoken about that in the past as well, where I think some people were sent to Malaysia or Indonesia or something like that. And they were sent with promises of a job. They went over there and then they're like basically kidnapped and forced to work in a call center to try and scam people.
They were in a compound and they come back and they're like, hey, you need to earn your keep, which is a very common thing in human trafficking, which is, you need to earn your room and board. And they pay them such a pittance to do this stuff that they essentially never get out of debt. And so never get freed. But that's kind of the gist of how this works. But yeah, in that case, they were promised, I believe, coding jobs. And they went over there and come to find out, then they're just locked up in this compound and they were done for. But, the stuff is still happening at scale, huge ways, and there's huge money in cybercrime. I think I've told you this before, but there's a study that said if you take the gross national product of like the countries in the world, it would be like the US, China, and if cybercrime were a country, it'd be number 3.
And I think I debated that figure with you last time, and I'm still skeptical of it. So bring me the receipts.
I'm telling you.
Speaking of receipts, the next story, I thought this was you, but it wasn't. But it ties on to this story, what we're talking about, one of those human trafficking things. A single father was tricked into going to Cambodia as a driver, I think it was. And then they locked him in a compound and everything, like you said that they do.
Yep.
But because he didn't know any English, he was really useless at using a computer, and he was a bit stubborn. they thought, like, let's let him go. They returned his passport and released him.
They just said it's not worth it. We've all had that user or two that we're like, maybe this isn't for you. Well,
yeah. So he had minimal computer skills, could not speak English, resisted participating in scam operations, and these factors led the syndicate to consider him as useless. They banished him within the compound. So they did say that he wasn't physically harmed, but he did live in constant fear, as I'd assume anyone would be in constant fear and stress. So he dropped like 20 kgs in weight, and he managed to contact a friend who alerted his mother, and then she reported the case, and then it was
shoe sales position. That's what it was, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
$1,300 per month for being a shoe salesperson. Well, it's it's.
Well, I think it's crazy. Can you imagine on your resume having to put down, was so bad at computer skills and personal skills, I was fired by scammers?
Yeah.
Right. Is that like a LinkedIn skill that you throw up there?
I don't know. Well, if he was good enough to use LinkedIn, he might put it on there. Clearly not. Or maybe he was just being stubborn. But that's why it reminded me of you. I thought, like, if it was possible to remove someone for being useless, it would be this. So with that, we're off next week, and we'll see you in a week's time. Until then, hope you enjoyed the show and stay secure.